Hey guys, it's your boy Newbie Coder here again with yet another video. This one's gonna be on modules, packages, and libraries. If you haven't watched my previous videos, go ahead and watch those so that you are well prepared and you can follow along nicely in this video. Alright, so let's just jump right into today's topic, which is modules, packages, and libraries. So a module is a single file containing Python code. It includes functions, classes, and variables that can be imported and used in other Python scripts. So essentially, if you have a file with some functions or some sort of functionality and you want to be able to import that functionality into another file, when you do, that file that you're importing from is technically a module. And we haven't talked about classes or objects yet, so just ignore that for now. But essentially, functions, if you recall from my previous video, I showed you how to define a function and then call it. Not only can you call that function in multiple locations in the same file, but you can also call that function in other files using the module functionality here. Now, if you go a step higher, you have what's called a package, and that is basically a collection of modules or files that have different functionality grouped together in a directory or a folder structure. To classify a file as a package, you need to include __init__.py file for Python to consider it as a package, so just keep that in mind. And then a library is another step above module and package, which provides a collection of modules and packages. But sometimes these words are used interchangeably. The main thing that you're concerned with is the module and the functionality that it offers. Now we'll also talk about the Python base package or module, and then we'll talk about third-party packages or libraries as well. All right, so let's just jump right into the code. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up my terminal. I have this directory called modules, packages, and libraries. I will go ahead and open that in VS Code. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and create a file here in this directory called newbie working file.py. Okay, so in this file you have a bunch of different lines of code, so some random line of code, and you can see that you have a bunch of different lines of code here, and then you want to import a function that is part of a module. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a module. So a module, again, is just a Python file with functions, variables, and a bunch of other cool stuff. So let's say we have a variable here called newbie, and it basically is defined by a string. I am a newbie coder. Okay, and then you also have a function. Remember how we define functions? Let's call it a newbie function. And what this function does, it prints I am a newbie. Let's call it that so it's different. Okay, so now this module here, which you just created, has a variable and a function, but now you can close this, and in your actual project file, let's say this is your project that you're working on, you want to be able to use the function and the variable in that module. So to do that, the best practice is to go to the very top of your code and simply import the name of the module you want to bring in, right? So you could say import newbie module right here, and then you can simply go ahead and call the function by simply doing that with a period and then newbie function here. Okay, so a function, remember, when you call it, it has to have the open and close brackets. And if I run this, I'm printing out I'm a newbie in this function. And I can run this multiple times because you can call a function multiple times, right? And it's gonna print the same thing. Now, similarly, I can also use the variable that I created. Remember newbie? Right here, newbie, and I can print that as well, but for this I'm going to need a print statement, and there you go. This one is I'm a newbie coder. So we're able to import functionality and variables in our project by simply importing it like this. Now, another thing which you'll see often is aliasing, and the aliasing is basically assigning a different name to it. So for instance, we can call this nm just to make it shorter, because typing this out is a pain in the butt. So nm, you can go ahead and replace that with nm, and it would do the exact same thing that it was doing with the entire name typed out. Okay, just like that. So that's basic understanding of modules. Now, what is a package? Let's imagine that we have a folder called newbie package. Okay, and let's close this file here, and let's say this module was part of this package. Okay, right here. So now the module that we created earlier, this one here, belongs to this package. Now remember, in order to treat this folder or directory as a package, you need to create a file called __init.py. I believe with Python 3.3 or 3 and onwards, you don't need to do that anymore, but it's always best practice to identify packages with the __init__.py file. Okay, so don't need to do anything here, but with this, we have declared this as a package with the same function and same variable. So now you can see squiggly lines here, right? And what that means is that module, it doesn't belong to the directory that this file is in, because clearly the module is not in this outside directory, which is where this file is. The module is within newbie package. So in order to bring that module into your function, you basically have to call the package first. Okay, so you would say newbie package dot newbie module, and then it runs the same way. There you go. Essentially, remember when I said it goes to a higher level, this package is your higher level. Then you have the module. You can put that module in an alias and then go ahead and use that alias to bring in your function or your variable. So these are the lowest levels. So that's how it works. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about some modules that are provided by Python. Okay, those are called base Python modules. When you downloaded Python, if you've watched my video, I show you how to download Python on your computer. You automatically install or download packages that are provided by Python or modules. And if you go to your, let's say we go to Python website, we downloaded Python from here, you press that button, or actually we did it with Homebrew, but you could also do it from here. But if you go into documentation, you would see that you have the Python documentation here, and you have Python installing Python modules, a bunch of different cool stuff. And then you have a global module index. So you click that and you would see that there's a bunch of different modules in this index. So we can scroll through and you can play around with a bunch of different things, but we'll talk about some that are relatable and that are going to be used quite often in your programming journey. So the one that I have used is mathematical functions. Let's say your annoying boss that has been chasing you in the past few videos asks you to give him the value of 13 raised to the power of 5, for instance. If you were to do that yourself, you would, let's create a new file, manager reply dot, let's not forget newbie manager reply dot py. Okay, so let's say he asks you to give him the answer of 13 raised to the power of 5. So 13, and this is how much you want to raise it by. So if you were a newbie, you would simply multiply 13 5 times and go ahead and please your manager, right? So if you do, oops, that's 6 times. If you do like that, and then you print result, and you get the answer, you go and you give him the answer and he's happy. But now he comes back and asks you to give him the answer of 13 to the power 13, and now you're screwed because you don't want to keep adding, 13, let's say 100 times or whatever, based on his requirement. You want to be able to use something smarter than this. So you go and Google online how to raise something to the power of something using Python, and you come across the math module, and you can see this module provides access to mathematical functions. You go here, there's a bunch of different functions here, and the documentation kind of tells you what each function does. So you can run through all of these in your own spare time, but the one we need to please our manager is the power functions, right? So power and logarithmic, these are exponentials. You're gonna keep scrolling down and you find power xy. So basically it returns x raised to the power of y, okay? And it also converts both its argument to type float. So just keep that in mind, and I'll show you why. So you're gonna copy this and paste it. And you're like, why do I have squiggly lines here? That's because you haven't imported this module in your code. So to do that, you would simply do import math, and now it works. So math.power x to the power y, so x to the power y. And just to show you that it's working, I'm gonna go and raise it to the power of 5 and call this result, and then print result again. So you see, same answer, but this one, since it was in float, you would get the decimal places. If you hover over, it says this basically means what it returns, right? What the function returns, and you can see it returns a float. We don't want that. Let's say we want to return an integer, we simply cast it. So this basically is casting the answer from this, and now you have the same result. This is a module imported from the Python library here, and this is the Python standard library, and they come built in with the Python installation. Now, just to give you another example, you could go back here and you can look through, different modules. Another one that is used quite often is the random module. So if you open here, this module implements pseudo-random number generators for various distribution, blah, blah, blah. But essentially all it does is it creates random values for you, right? So if you look at some of the functions that it offers, you can see there's one called random.range. So you can have the start, the stop, and step. Let's say we are interested in creating random values. We're gonna go ahead and import that module in our code, and now we can go ahead and use that, right? So let's create a random value and use the random module, and then within random, remember we are going to use the rand range, and that is a function. So if you hover over, you can see that is a function which has a start, stop, and a step parameter. So we need to provide it a start, stop, and step. Let's give it a start of 1, and let's stop it at 4, and let's not give it a step, so it will default to 1. This here int equals to 1 basically means that it will default to, step will default to 1 if we don't provide a value, but we could step it to 2 just like that. But we're not going to do that here. Random.randrange 1 to 4, and then we're going to print random value. And let's say for the sake of this video that our manager asked for a random value between 1 to 3, 1 to 4 excluding. Okay, so the reason I say 4 is excluded is if you go back to the documentation, it says that the positional argument pattern matches that of range. And if you watched my other video, you'd know that range has the start inclusive, but the stop exclusive. I'm gonna go ahead and run that, and you can see it spits out a value of 1, meaning 1 is included in our response. If I keep going, it might give us another random value, in this case 2, and then 3, and then 3 again, 3 again, 3 again. It really likes the number 3, and then it goes back to 1 to 1, right? So it never gave us 4. Let's say you wanted to include 4, you would use maybe this function here, because you can see that it returns a random integer between a and b equals to, meaning inclusive. So we can do something like, let's modify this one. So rand int, and now it will throw a 4 as well. Okay, so 1 1 1 4 right there. So before it wasn't including 4, but now it is including 4. Awesome, so that's how Python modules work from the Python standard library. Now, there's going to be cases where, you know, Python library does not offer us everything in the world that we need. For instance, data scientists use a lot of different tools to do a lot of crazy stuff. And one of the tools they use, or one of the libraries they use, is Pandas, which offers data manipulation and data frames and a bunch of cool stuff that make your life easier as a data scientist or a data engineer, etc. We're not going to go into too much detail in Pandas, but I want to show you the fact that you can import Pandas in your file and use it for your own data science or whatever purposes, right? So let's call it newbie pandas.py. Let's create a file called newbies pandas, and let's import pandas just like how we imported the other modules or packages. And you can see here the squiggly line that says pandas is not accessed, import pandas could not be resolved. So what that means is pandas does not come built in with the Python installation, so it's not on your computer. You need to download it from the internet. Now let's go to pandas and just kind of read up on what pandas is, right? So pandas, if you go to the website, you'd see that pandas is a fast, powerful, flexible, and easy to use open source data analysis and manipulation tool built on top of the Python programming languages. And then it kind of tells you how to install pandas, right? So if you go here, actually let's go through documentation, it's a little better. So I went to documentation in pandas and getting started. So it tells you you can install it using Conda, and I'm not going to explain Conda. It's a Python distribution, and we'll talk about that in a later video. But if you watch my previous videos, you will be familiar with pip, Python installation packages, which basically Python package installation manager. Okay, so all you have to do is run this code in your terminal, pip install pandas. Now, I would recommend going and watching my virtual environment video just so that you can isolate your different environments and different projects. So essentially, pandas can have different versions, right? Pandas is developed by a group of different people, and right now it's at version 2.03, but in the future you would expect the development team to add more functionality to this library. So you're going to have different versions of pandas. So if you don't isolate them in virtual environments, you're going to run into issues when you're running different projects that have different versions of pandas installed. All right, so let's assume that you don't know what virtual environments are because you haven't watched the video yet. We're going to do it the not so best practice way, which is just simply installing pandas or downloading pandas in your base Python environment. So I'm in the directory that we were in earlier, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pip install pandas right here, run the code, and you can see it is basically reaching out to the internet and downloading all the modules and packages and functionality that you're going to need to do really cool stuff with it. So now that it's successfully installed, we can go back to our code, and you can see the squiggly lines are gone and pandas is accessible. So let's go back, and let's say we don't know anything about how to use pandas. You would essentially go back to the website and look at the documentation and the user guide, and it will tell you how to import pandas into your file. So the best practice is import pandas as PD. So we're going to go ahead and copy that and paste that, and that's just a shorter form, and you'll see that more on the internet. Okay, so pandas as PD, and then you go ahead and use the data frame function, which in this case is a class, but let's, for the sake of this video, call it a function, and you can use it on different a dictionary, for instance. So let's go ahead and try that. Now your annoying boss comes in and he tells you, I need a table for this dictionary. Okay, and the dictionary here is basically, remember, curly brackets, and it has name and a list here. So if you haven't watched the data structure video, go ahead and watch that so you know what a dictionary looks like. But essentially you have key and value. So your key is name and the value is a list of names. Let's say John, Jim, Stacy. And then you have another key, which is the class. The class meaning what class are they in. So John is in the math class, Jim is in biology, and Stacy's in economic. Okay. Now we have created a random dictionary, and our boss wants us to convert this into a table format. So let's say I want to print this dictionary as is for now. I'm gonna go ahead and run this code, and this is what it prints out. Okay, so that's not what our boss wants, so we're gonna go and try to please him using the pandas library. So in this case, all you do is pd dot data frame, and then you drop this dictionary in that data frame and it will convert it into a data frame. So let's call it df as a variable, and then we will print df just to see what it looks like. And I run it, and look at that, it looks very nice. You have the name and class as column names, you have the values, and then you have an index. So essentially pandas module allowed us to convert this into something that looks like this. So that's awesome. Now, how did I know how to use data frame like this? Obviously I've used it before, but you would go and look through the documentation to try to figure out, you know, what is a data frame, what does it look like. So in this case, you would pd.dataframe converts this into that. What I had here was A was name, and these were the names, and then I had another column called class, and it converts. Since this is one column, it looks like this. All right, so now you also want to know how is data frame placed in the pandas directory structure, for instance. So if you're familiar with GitHub, it basically is an online repository where a lot of this code is shared amongst different people. So you can look at the file structure for pandas here. If you go to github.com/pandas dev and pandas, what we imported was through pandas right here. So again, as I mentioned previously, a package is basically a collection of modules. So a package was a folder like this. You're also pulling something from the internet that was a folder and a file inside that folder. Now, the real location for this data frame functionality is in pandas, core, and frame. Okay, so frame is the module that allows you to convert this dictionary into the data frame. But you might ask, you know, what is this? We don't call the frame module in here. Well, let's kind of use that frame module, okay, and see what we get. So in pandas, remember the directory pandas right here, and then core, right? We're in core, and then this file here, which is the module frame. Okay, so we went from the package, which is the pandas, to this module, and now we're gonna run, let's call this, let's give it an alias, so PCF, okay, and let's use that to create the same data frame. So PCF dot data frame, and then give it the same dictionary, and I'm gonna print this first one here and then second one, and what you'll notice is they will look exactly the same. You see, you got one right here and one right here. So what pandas has done is, since this would have been too complicated, right, they allowed you to treat pandas as a module itself, so that you can simply import the functionality directly just by doing pd.dataframe. So you don't have to go all the way deep into the directory to find this module that allows you to do this. All right, that was just extra bit of information, but I really wanted to get the concept build into your minds that it's simply just working with files, functions, variables, directories, and just utilizing code that's located in different locations and using it in your current file. All right, so that covers the third-party package called Pandas. And if you want more information, just go ahead and read up on Pandas, and you will know a lot more about what the capabilities of this third-party package are. Similarly, you have other packages out there in the world that, you know, offer really cool functionality that you may need to use in your program at some point in your life. So all you have to do is just Google the functionality you need, and you will stumble upon different packages that you can simply import, first by downloading it through pip or conda, and then utilizing it in your code. So I hope you learned something today. I will catch you guys in the next video. Thank you so much, and bye.